My Grandma by Jessica White.
It was April 1st, 2020, when I got the text that there was a COVID exposure in the assisted living home that my grandma was currently living in while she healed from a recent surgery. Fear instilled my body as I knew what this could possibly mean for my grandma. I mean, we were in complete lockdown in Dallas at the time. And how on earth could this be happening, I thought to myself. And it just so happens that the COVID exposure was a nurse who had worked at the assisted living home. And the nurse just happened to be the one that was checking on my grandmother every day that week. Chills went through my body as the plot continued to thicken for what this could mean for my grandma. I mean, it was almost 2 weeks since Judge Clay Jenkins sent Dallas into a lockdown. I thought this would mean that the number of cases would die down, but all around the world, they continue to rapidly increase. It had not even been a day since I heard about the COVID exposure in my grandmother's assisted living home before I got the call that my grandmother was being rushed to the hospital because she had tested positive for COVID-19. My worst fear had come to life. Her 83-year-old life flashed before my eyes. I mean, no one knew what this virus was or how to stop the spread or how to cure it, and her life was in the hands of a doctor who didn't even know what they were facing. It wasn't long after my grandmother arrived at the hospital that she was sent into the quarantine floor. I mean, my grandmother had barely been at the hospital a day before the doctors had to put a tube down her throat to help her breathe because she could not on her own. Sometimes my brain just goes in circles thinking about the fact that my grandma would not be alive if a ventilator was not placed down her throat. And days went by and there was no change in my grandmother's breathing. There was a video camera in my grandmother's room where I was able to watch her, but this was more hurt than help when it came to me. I had always been afraid of the hospital. Both my parents have been through chemo sessions for cancer, and never once did I visit them after their countless surgeries. So seeing my grandmother in the hospital was something that was very traumatic for me. And the doctors told me that although my grandmother was pretty much unconscious, they thought she might be able to hear me when I spoke to her over the video camera. And so I started to log on to the video camera every day just to sit there with her. And I know that she probably didn't hear me or even know that I was there, but I thought that my presence could maybe make an impact. And 2 weeks had gone before, and my grandmother started to fight the tube. This meant that she could finally breathe on her own. I mean, this was some of the best news I had heard in my entire life. But although this news was great, this was a long road to recovery for my grandmother. And she arrived at my house weaker than she had ever been before. Seeing my grandmother go through something so severe changed my whole perspective on COVID. Something that I had just heard about on the news or had experienced in the lockdown had quickly become reality that April. And from that step forward, COVID was personal and something I took incredibly seriously. So when the vaccine came out, I was so excited. This was something that could help those like my grandmother, and so another family didn't have to go through what we went through. And I got my first Pfizer vaccine on March of 2021, almost a year after everything with my grandmother. And the first vaccine knocked me out. I mean, for almost a whole week due to severe symptoms. And after 3 weeks, I was able to receive the second dose of Pfizer. Although it was new and people were a little skeptical, I knew if there was an opportunity to help those like my grandmother, I was going to take that opportunity. I felt like nothing could stop me now that I had the vaccine, and I encouraged my friends to do the same. And months after receiving the vaccine, the booster became available. So over winter break, me and my grandmother went together to go get our booster. Again, I felt those side effects from the vaccine, but it was only 24 hours versus the week of symptoms I'd felt before. And shortly after receiving the vaccine, the Omicron variant came out. Almost everyone I knew had their Christmas affected by COVID, including my own. Many of my extended family members weren't able to make it to Christmas after testing positive on Christmas Eve. And sadly, for the first time in the pandemic, I also tested positive for COVID. Although I was boosted, fear still instilled my body. I had pretty severe symptoms for over a week, although the quarantine had been moved to a 5-day isolation period. I called my grandmother to break the news that I'd be coming home for a few days because I tested positive. I mean, I wasn't on a ventilator or anything like my grandmother was, but I had a nasty fever and chills. I wasn't expecting COVID to affect me as much as it did. I thought with my vaccine, I wouldn't get very many symptoms other than feeling like I had a cold or something. But every day, I felt like I woke up with what felt like a new symptom. And as I reflect on my time during this pandemic, I've grown so much, and my belief in the vaccine has grown so much as well. At first, maybe I got the vaccine because my parents said that I had to. But now, I can confidently say I got the vaccine for others. With 2 immunocompromised parents at home, I knew that this meant that there were other people out there that had homes like I did. You never know who people go home to, and you always want to try to stop the spread. Seeing my grandmother on her deathbed because of COVID helped me to show how serious this virus is and how important it is to protect your loved ones. I got the vaccine for those who are immunocompromised. And I got the vaccine for those who have grandparents at home. I got the vaccine for those who are choosing not to get the vaccine. And I got the vaccine for all those healthcare workers who risk their life every day to help those who have COVID. And I got the vaccine for my grandmother.